Did you just go to see Blade Runner?
Sell.
Are you just going to randomly
Sell.
say sell? What sort of sell do you like?
Samsung.
I can't even keep
Smartphone.
up with you. Why do you keep doing that? Why do you keep doing that?
iPod. Blade Runner 2049, the long-awaited sequel to the Ridley Scott original. I watched the original Blade Runner a long time ago, like around the 00s when I was working at Blockbuster. I watched it mainly out of an obligation. I felt like I should watch it because it's one of those films that's often talked about. And I watched it for the sake of watching it, and I don't feel I got the full extent of what it was gunning for. And I feel I may have slapped the film in the face somewhat. Then I didn't feel as bad when I found out that that really wasn't the final cut of the movie either. It wasn't until a couple years down the line that Ridley Scott finally came out with his quote-unquote final cut. And I sat down just a couple days ago, watched it, and I am so happy I did. I hope, beyond hope, that this film goes down in history as probably one of the greatest sequels ever made. And I know I say that a lot about a lot of great sequels. I know I'm probably one of the worst guys to, say a sequel is horrible, but or that it's great, because I say a lot of sequels are good, particularly nowadays. But this one goes further than I think I've ever seen a sequel go before. And this one had a lot of odds stacked against it, because the original Blade Runner was it wasn't a success when it came out, and it was one of those ones that found its audience inevitably. For a lot of people, it's held very close to their hearts. When you watch Ridley Scott's original, it's not so much about the popcorn action spectacle. It's not a science fiction film in the way most people perceive science fiction. It is a very cerebral film, and the Ridley Scott's final cut, I think, finally hit home what he was gunning for on it, and it felt so unique in its own right. And I'm very happy to finally have given it that legitimate shot. And I feel like my investment in that is incredibly rewarded walking into this new film. This new film was directed by Denis Villeneuve, who, if I hope I'm pronouncing that right, if not, I'm just going to keep saying that like that, because honestly, I like the way I say it, Villeneuve, who directed The Arrival, not The Arrival, Arrival. The Arrival was with Charlie Sheen. Arrival, he directed that one, and to much great acclaim last year. Well, this one, there was a lot of things stacked against it, but there was a lot of things that intrigued people about it. In particular, the return to the role of Rick Deckard by Harrison Ford. The history of the production of Blade Runner is the stuff of legend. In particular, one of the things is Harrison Ford, he had a bit of a hard time making that movie. It was a hard time for everyone making that movie, and Harrison Ford, for a time, had a hard time really reconciling his feelings towards it. So it was kind of amazing that he came back to this one. And the thing I got to give him credit for, he's coming back, and it seems like he keeps coming back to the roles that made him an icon, and you feel like he is kind of reconciling his history with them. He got the resolution he wanted with Han Solo in The Force Awakens. I have my feelings about Crystal Skull, and you're going to find those out. Stay tuned. This return was the most intriguing to me because of Harrison Ford's pretty much turbulent history with the prior film. The funny thing is, he's not actually in like the bulk of the movie. I mean, the trailers pretty much make it out like he's in it all the way through, but no, he actually comes in at a latter part of the film, but he makes every single second he's in that film count. And there is so much subtlety that he is adding to that performance, which honestly I have not seen him do in a long time. Probably not since Frantic have I seen him do a performance like that. And it's kind of astonishing. And God forbid he ever says he retires, but if he were to retire tomorrow, I'd say he would have ended on probably one of the greatest notes that any actor could ever end their career on. Now, that's not to diminish the rest of the cast. Far from it. The newcomers to this film: Ryan Gosling, Jared Leto, Robin Wright Penn, or does she go by Robin Wright now? Robin Wright's really been having a good time, hasn't he, between Wonder Woman, House of Cards. She's been coming back with a vengeance, and she's been great in everything. And she's really great in this. Now, I'm going to stay as spoiler-free as possible, because honestly, I want you guys to see this one. I don't want to spoil anything for you. I'm just going to tell you the things that to be braced for. First off, much like the original, this one moves at its own pace, takes its time, and there's not a single scene wasted. There's not a single time where I'm going, that could have been cut, that's a bit fatty. No, there's nothing in this film that's wasted. Every single shot is deliberate. Every single scene aids to the grand development, not just of Deckard. Actually, far from it. The main character, played by Ryan Gosling, he is a character that is intriguing from the get-go. The film does not delude you into thinking that this is entirely Deckard's story. No, this is actually this character's story, K, as he's called, or he will go by another name later on. Once again, no spoilers. But you will see him go on this journey, and you have to really kind of embrace what the goal is of this investigation he's going on. And when you think of the ramifications of what he's pursuing and how important it is, I was absolutely hypnotized by where it was going. And I think the reason why I was feeling all this is because I sat down and watched Ridley Scott's final cut. And because I did that, I was able to move on into this one with a nice fresh perspective and to be able to springboard off that into this. And they go hand in hand. Like a good sequel should, it goes hand in hand with its predecessor, moves the story along forward, and it doesn't just move the story along, it moves the world beyond. They take advantage of the fact it's been 30 years since the events of the previous film. The world has still changed. Now, and I think that's a wonderful virtue that Denis Villeneuve takes a complete advantage of. Yes, I look at this film and I still say unmistakably this is the world that Ridley Scott meticulously created in the original film, but I looked at this going, I'm seeing nuances here that are exclusively this director's particular trademark. And I can't stress enough that this is probably one of the biggest artistic triumphs of every single facet of a production. It didn't have Ridley Scott coming back to direct it. This one had a new director, and I admit, ashamedly, I've not seen Arrival. I have not seen any of his other prior works. I want to watch him now after this, because this director has such an exceptional grace when it comes to staging shots, to directing actors. There was such a sublime harmony that seemed to emanate from everyone involved in the production. It seemed like everyone was on board, and I just got carried away with it. And by extension, one special shout out, I have to send a shout out to Roger Deakins, who has been one of the greatest cinematographers in the history of film. Look up his history. I guarantee you'll find stuff on there that you'll realize he did, and you'll remember how good those movies looked. I'll tell you now, one of my favorites of his work was Skyfall. He easily outdid himself with Blade Runner 2049. Every single shot is just awe-inspiring. I mean, I don't want to call it a tapestry, because film as tapestry, that's what Wes Anderson does. This is more of a living mural. I'd say that's probably a better way to describe this one. This one, every single shot is just a unique work of art in its own right. The color palette is broad, various, deliberate. When a scene wants to feel cold, it feels cold. When you want to feel wet in a scene, you feel wet. If you want to feel just that you're in an irradiated wasteland, you feel this sense of foreboding and impending terror that comes from it. And I'm also going to say the screenwriting on this, same thing, it's utterly seamless. This entire film is seamless when it comes to putting it next to its predecessor. It's so much so that you could sit down and watch both movies together. That's how good it is. And I guess I've gushed about it enough, so if there's any and in the end it's just a nitpick, so much so that I can't even deduct points for it. I felt like there was some plot threads that maybe didn't get resolved, but that's just the kind of typical Hollywood spectacle mind in me going like, well, what about this and what about this? That's not the intention of this film. That's not the intention of the previous film. The film focuses on what needs to be focused on, resolves what needs to be resolved, and leaves you with a sense of foreboding, like the original did. Particularly when you watch Ridley Scott's final cut and you see that ending, you are left with a sense of foreboding of what happens next. This movie does the exact same thing, and it's amazing for it. So once again, I'm leaving you with another Narcotic Casserole perfect rating of... Do you agree? And please, love of God, agree. Do you disagree? Shame on you. Leave it in the comments below. And for more addictive content on Narcotic Casserole, simply like, share, subscribe, click, thou shalt be served.